Welcome to part 1 of this Leopard 42 Focus project. Quick review here. Focus projects are where we take deep dives on custom boat installations covering advanced electronics, solar rigging, fabrication, cabinetry, and more, all done by our in-house marine pros, and then we get to see how it unfolds on different boats. Check out our video podcast as well, because we often have the owners of these boats on as guests, where you can hear more about why they chose what they did and what they've learned along the way. Now, without delay, let's dive into this Leopard 42 Focus project. Let's cover a little bit of the highlights about what this boat is having done to it. It is getting 3,300 watt solar array with dedicated MPPTs, one for each of the panels. All hard panels, no flex panels here. It's also getting a 1200 amp hour 24 volt Victron battery bank, which means that would be 2400 amp hours at 12 volts, which is what most of us are more used to. So it's a monster battery bank on a Leopard 42 for any 42-foot catamaran. Also a 48,000 BTU aircon setup. So it's going to have three 16K BTU 24-volt direct DC units. And yes, I did say three. This boat actually is not made to have three, so the yacht rigger custom figured out a way to fit an entire new air conditioning unit on the boat, all integrated in with everything else. It's also getting a 40 gallon per hour water maker, 24 volt as well, and it's getting two 185 amp high output alternators with Zeus regulators. Such a sweet setup. A 5,000 watt Quattro inverter charger, Phoenix Global shore power charging. They're converting the refrigeration over to 24 volt DC, more efficiency there. They're getting a chain counter, radar install, solar lights, and a few other goodies. So let's cut over to the pros and have them tell us and show us everything that's going down on this awesome, beautiful, brand new Leopard 42.
Hey guys, so I'm here with Frank and we're going to give you an update on this awesome Leopard 42 project that we're on. This is a 2023 Leopard 42 that is getting extensive upgrades, and Frank has been project managing.
Yeah, we got about 2 more weeks left and we're, I guess, about 6-7 weeks in. And so getting towards the final stages of most of the elements right now.
Yep, so you can see behind us we started mocking up. Whoa, I'm tripping over the deck here. So we're mocking up the solar install for the deck mounted solar panels. We're doing 3 410 watt panels up over here. These are Panasonics up on the deck, and then we'll show you guys in a minute on the solar frame back there. We have 5 more of these same panels. So yeah, we're using a different system than we did on the 50 because we have a little more room. On the 50 we did 4 panels, and we're doing 3 on this one, and you can see it better on this guy. The corners don't overlap the edge of the top, so we can use these corner mounted brackets instead of the Q-rail system, and so it's a little simpler, and yeah, gonna work well, and should have that, hopefully get these panels bolted on by end of day tomorrow, but we'll see in the next video.
Yeah, so out here on deck, we've done a few things. On the mast, we've added a Quantum 2 Doppler radar. We've added flag halyards. We've taken the lazy jack lines and we've spread them further out to make that thread bigger so the mainsail snags a little less. We've also upgraded the anchor on the boat to a Mantis M2, 85 pound. And we removed the swivel and we added some chain markers. We've also added a digital chain counter at the helm. Okay, so we've got 5 of the Panasonic panels back here. Right now we're in the process of wiring them. That actually takes about 2 days to do, because to get the wires where they're nice and hidden and look really good, it really takes a lot of tedious work. On this arch we've also installed a shower right here. This nice kind of, I guess you'd call that a rainfall shower head. And the way that this works is there's actually a switch down below where the normal shower is, the one that you have the squeeze handle. And so all you have to do is flip that switch up, and then it opens the solenoid, and that causes the shower to come on. And your hot-cold mixing valve is down there as well. So this shower just looks phenomenal, I think, underneath this arch. Okay, one other thing that we added on the boat for this client is these Lumitech lights right here. These are white and blue switchable, so if Steve behind me turns the switch off and then back on quickly, they'll actually switch to blue. So this is useful at night when you're loading or unloading the tender. You can turn it on in white. If you leave the boat and you want to be able to find your boat in a crowded anchorage, or just not be quite so bright but have some ambience, you can switch it to this blue mode. So those are pretty nice to have right there. And we just put in a simple toggle switch back there right next to the dinghy davit switch.
And we have these John steps over here, so make boarding the boat from the side here when you're at the dock way, way easier, whether it's stepping up or stepping down. But definitely a nice, convenient addition.
Yes.
Next we have right here, we've installed this giant pile of tools in the cockpit. Owner especially requested them, and if you want one of these piles of tools, please come see us.
Okay, two other things worth mentioning while we're outside is we're installing Flexifold props. So these props have already been painted with anti-foul. Those will get installed by a diver this week. And then we're also adding high output alternators with Arco Zeus regulators. And we're going to be starting on that part of the project this week as well.
And we're doing 285s, right?
We're doing two 185 amp alternators.
Yes.
It's a 24 volt system, so that's quite a lot of power.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we have the custom interior by the Outrigger with the amazing ceiling finish. So though these are all taken down though for, mostly we're running wires for the solar, is that
mostly for solar, a little bit for the work around the mast,
Yep.
the upgraded VHF cable, the radar cables, etc.
Cool.
The rest of the room is, of course, pure chaos as we're still working, so we have tools everywhere. But you also see that when we're working on a boat, we like to put down this protective flooring. It just makes it so that we can still wear our shoes and be safe while we're working with heavy tools, or just whatever we can do to kind of keep from adding any scratches to the boat once it gets here. We have converted the galley to an electric galley. So there's now an induction cooktop and an electric oven, and those are both powered through the inverter, so they can be run off of the battery bank. We've installed quite a large battery bank, a lot of fusing and circuit protection, and it's pretty impressive, so I'd like to show you that next. What we've done to make it look nicer than the piece of white laminate that came before is we laminated with the matching trim and put fiddles in here so you can't hit up against these Lynx distributors. There's just a little finger hole right here if you need to access what's underneath. So I'll move this out of the way, and now the big reveal of the electrical system is we've got 6 of these 200 amp hour Victron batteries. You can see 2 of them right here on top. The other 4 are almost hard to see because they're underneath that. All 6 of these batteries are in custom fabricated trays to keep them secure in there.
No, these are 24 volt batteries.
These are 24
right?
volt batteries. So
Yeah.
these 6 batteries, that's 1200 amp hours at 24 volts. For most of our friends who have 12 volt boats like myself, that's the equivalent of 2400 amp hours at 12 volts. So that's double what I have on my boat, which is also lithium, and I've also done extensive cruising on. This is an insane amount of power. This is, you can run not just one, but multiple air cons off overnight kind of power. It's really quite impressive. It was a lot of work to get this to actually fit in here. So that was a good portion of the project at the beginning. Each of these batteries is individually fused, run to this Lynx distributor here. From there, it's controlled by the Lynx Smart BMS, which is over here on the far end. From there, it goes through a series of remote battery switches, Class T fuses, etc., before that power gets distributed throughout the boat. We really love the Lynx Smart BMS, which pairs with the Victron batteries nicely because it can actually tell other systems on board when to stop allowing things to discharge power and when to stop allowing things to charge. So now the boat originally came with a 12 volt system as well, and we've actually kept that. And that's another, I think it's about 440 amp hours of AGM batteries. So this isn't all the power he has in the boat. He's also got 440 amp hours at 12 volts that is being maintained pretty much always at 100% state of charge. And that's powering the pre-existing 12 volt loads throughout the boat. The only pre-existing 12 volt loads that have been converted to 24 volts are the refrigerators. There's a set of a fridge freezer in this room, and there's a fridge in the cockpit, and those are now both running on 24 volts. They just run more efficiently at a higher voltage like that, and it was an easy swap to make, so it made sense. The other thing that we've had to do that's interesting on this boat is the client requested 3 air conditioners. This boat was designed for 2 air conditioners. Not only have we put batteries in one of the locations that one of the air cons is supposed to be, but we have to find a place to put a 3rd air con that was never supposed to be on this boat. So one of the air cons is in the location it was originally intended, but we've had to find other places for the other 2 air cons. If you'll look over here, you'll see where one of the air cons is. This is a Frigamar 24 volt, 16,000 BTU air conditioner. By using these DC air cons, what we've done is reduce the need for more or larger inverters because none of the load for these air cons has to go through the inverters. So the inverter really is just powering the electric galley, hot water heaters if they're needed, and whatever's plugged in the outlets. But it doesn't have to do anything with the air cons, so that's a huge plus. He can just power these from the batteries, from solar, from the alternators, etc. And that's just brilliant, really.
And so a lot of people may not understand this, and this kind of question might come up. Why is that important that it doesn't have to run through the inverter? Is it because they don't then have to install a second inverter or a larger inverter? Because I think people might misunderstand that the inverter has limitations, right?
Right. There's a lot of benefits there. One is we're working with a boat, again, that's intended for 2 air conditioners and a much smaller battery bank, and yet we've put that larger battery bank, we've put 3 air cons. So where are we going to put that other inverter? Well, I guarantee you if we put it somewhere, it's going to take up valuable storage space that the client would normally use for their personal goods, which we hate doing. That's why we've hidden this so well. Right. And when you see the other 2 air cons, you'll agree, we've not taken up any of his personal storage. To get the another inverter in here, we would have to do that. There's just no way around it.
You would lose an entire other storage area, plus the expense of running all the wires there and getting power to the inverter.
It's also a lot more labor. Inverters are very install heavy. It's a lot of work to install them. Whereas with this, it doesn't require that much additional work to install. It really doesn't require any additional work to install a DC aircon versus an AC powered aircon. So there's a lot of labor savings there as well. So the labor, the weight, all these reasons, it just makes sense to do.
Plus that conversion loss. Isn't there about an 8% conversion loss when you invert from DC up to AC power?
Yes, but this aircon experiences that as well.
It happens anyway.
But it's all happening in the aircon. And sure, the Victron inverter is slightly more efficient, but for all the reasons I just mentioned, it makes more sense to go this route.
You're saving the entire component from the install, the entire inverter.
Another thing that's really cool is Victron's new software, which has the solar priority. It only prioritizes DC loads through solar power. So if you're trying to power an aircon as an AC load, then it's not going to prioritize solar for that purpose. But with DC loads, it is. So what I'm getting at is if he's running aircon while connected to shore power, or while the generator is running, it will first prioritize solar power to power that, not take that power from the grid. And that's huge. That's going to save a ton of money because a lot of times he keeps this boat at his home dock and he's paying by the kilowatt hour there. If he goes to one of the mini marinas that charges by the kilowatt hour, it'll save money there. So that's a really nice feature, and I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
When you mentioned the 12-volt bank that's still on the boat, and it's staying at about 100% power, what is doing that?
So to maintain the 12-volt bank at close to 100% power, we have 2 Orion chargers that I'll show you in a moment. And so those are basically just taking power from the 24-volt bank and turning it into charging for that 12-volt bank. The big draws on the boat, like winches and windlass that come out of the 12-volt system, those will draw down that battery bank and just a little bit before the Orion can fully respond. But those batteries still being in here gives some cushion. You know, and it is able to provide that instantaneous power, and then the Orion will quickly recharge it. By putting 2 in, we're adding some redundancy here, and really so much of this system has large amounts of redundancy to it that the client really wanted and we were eager to provide. So any of these batteries could go down without affecting the rest of the system. Either of the Orions could go down without affecting the system. The way the solar panels are done, with each panel on its own MPPT or solar charge controller, any one of the panels could go down without affecting the rest of the system. And so there's a lot of ways that we've added that kind of redundancy in here that if things happen, they can be dealt with or not affect the livability of the boat very much. Individually fused. The fuses are located inside of this distributor. This distributor is quite intelligent. It can actually tell you if one of the fuses blows, exactly which fuse blew, and it will sound an alarm on the touchscreen over there. The other 4 batteries, of course, are underneath there. This is the smart BMS here. It's doing all the monitoring of the system, what's being charged, how the batteries are doing, make sure everything's happening very evenly. From there, the power goes down to this remote battery switch, which there's a switch for over at the electrical panel. So if there was an emergency and the client needed to turn it off the battery system, he could press a button over there and that would kill the power to the batteries. Down below here, we've got a lot of Class T fuses. These are for the different systems on the boat, including the inverter. You'll also see down at the bottom, there's spare fuses that are zip tied to the cable. We do that for the client. Yes, it costs more money because you're buying an extra fuse, but now you've got your spare right there where you need it. So if there's an issue and we are talking on the phone and say, hey, that fuse must be blown, you need to replace it, you don't have to go digging through a box. It's just right there, which is really nice. Buried deep in there, you'll also see another RBS. That one's specifically for the inverter, so that if there's an issue with the inverter or you're servicing the inverter, you can turn that one off. Again, that can be done remotely.
Frank, did you explain what an RBS is?
Yes, RBS stands for Remote Battery Switch. So most of us are familiar with the on-off, like the kind of circular red battery switches, but those have to have longer cables run to them, and longer cables are bad, so we want shorter cables. So this does the same thing as those rotary switches that we're all familiar with, but we're able to keep these cable links really short and put the switch, which is just a simple rocker switch, further away where it's more convenient. You'll see a lot of these little guys everywhere, and they're all labeled. These are inline fuses. They just have little small fuses inside of them. And everything we do is properly fused with protection for the wire, because fire is one of the biggest risks on a boat, and one of the main reasons for a fire is heat buildup from wires that are getting too hot, that a fuse would have probably prevented that. So you'll see a lot of those everywhere. In this compartment alone, there's 6 of those inline fuses. Well, in this corner, you can just see how tight the air conditioning system is, yet we've managed to get all the ductwork in here without being too tight. That duct there is actually going to go to a different air conditioner, but this is in the port aft cabin, and so there's a box that'll go to this one. But beneath that, you'll see the ductwork for the saloon. So this duct here goes to the port side of the saloon, and then there's one down here on the other side of this Y that's going to the starboard side of the saloon. And then that goes down into the aircon there. Now, fortunately, on most of the model air conditioners, the electrical box is detachable, which makes it a lot easier to find different locations for. So this is the electrical box here. And then the seawater pump, of course, is down in the bilge, and it's getting a signal from here as to when to turn on. Over here at the nav station, this is where the servo screen is going to go, the touch screen. We've already installed that. We're also going to have the aircon controller for the saloon is going to be right here. And then there's also going to be an I-70, which is a Raymarine product that will display wind, depth, all that kind of stuff. He's going to have that here as well. So that's where all that equipment will go. There's also an AIS transceiver that can send and receive AIS signals. And you don't need to interact with that, but the box is behind this location here. Okay, so we're in the port aft cabin now, and there's this great space up here to put a lot of the solar equipment. What we have is the solar wires come into this room, and then they go through a set of circuit breakers. They're called MCBs for miniature circuit breakers. They go through that so that we can turn off the solar panels so that we can work on the other equipment safely. They also act as fuses in a way, but the power comes out of those circuit breakers, and then each solar panel has its own solar controller over here. So there's a total of 8 of these. All the ones for the arch are on one board here, and then all the ones for the coach top are on one board here. So the power goes through those, comes back over to this board, where it goes through another set of breakers. So these breakers are on the output side, and then from there, the power will go through to this bus bar, and then from that bus bar, it'll go back over to the 24-volt system. One thing that's cool about the way we've mounted this is on a self-extinguishing board, and these boards can individually be removed from the wall by doing nothing more than removing a couple of nuts, and then you can actually bring it down to ground level to service it, to work on it. So you don't have to be up in there on a ladder the whole time working on it. In fact, that's how we wired it all. Also in here, there's a USB hub for all the networking. So each one of these controllers has a cable that goes to that USB hub, which then goes to the servo, so the servo can see what everybody's doing. So this is a really nice utilization of the space here. and it's very safe to work on because of the way that we can turn different panels off one at a time.
And you mentioned the servo a few times. What's a good way to think of what the servo does?
The servo is kind of, I guess, the brains. I mean, it monitors everything. The Lynx BMS is also doing that, but more specifically focused on the batteries. The servo is kind of monitoring what all the different pieces of equipment are doing. It's also giving you a really nice display to see what all the equipment's doing. So it's kind of the brain in that it's monitoring what all is going on, to some extent controlling what's going on, but it's able to communicate that information to you both via the screen, via Bluetooth app on the phone, and also as long as it's connected to the internet, you can then remotely log in on your phone and see what your system's doing while you're away from the boat. I can check on my boat right now. It's awesome. I love it.
I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive on such a sweet boat. Stay tuned for part 2. We have lots more content on our channel. If you'll go and check out our page, you'll see all kinds of cool stuff over there. Would you consider subscribing? It really helps a small channel like ours. Any kind of likes and comments interaction really goes a long way. We appreciate it so much, and we will see you next time on the On Deck channel. Sailor Smurf out.